what has happened before the war between Iran and Israel breaking out. One of the main problems in the eyes of those people who are coming from the alternative media in the United States, they believe that Iran was somehow so shy to get closer to Russia and China. And they wanted a path toward the United States, getting closer to the United States and the West. What was happening before the war between Iran and Israel?
Thank you very much. Talking about what happened on June 13th, we have to look into a development just before the attack. You know that President Trump came to office with this slogan or this doctrine of peace through strength, which later on we noticed that it was a cover-up for something else, was something bigger in terms of strategies that White House wanted to implement, not only in our region but also around the globe. It was actually hegemony through use of force. So peace was a cover-up for hegemony and strength was a cover-up for use of force. And it was actually what was happening during and after the Gaza war. While the Israeli regime tried to do the same, trying to just impose its will over not only Gazans and Palestinians, but also over other countries. We were in the middle of negotiation. We were in the middle of diplomacy when Israelis and Americans started to attack Iran. Let me tell you something that just hours before the aggression starts, we were in Oslo, we were in Norway, and I was with Foreign Minister and Deputy Foreign Minister, and also a few other foreign ministers, were in Oslo. We were talking about how we can proceed and to set the agenda for a breakthrough between Iran and the United States on this nuclear file. We advanced to the extent that we were just planning whether we have to invite Mr. Witkoff to come to Oslo, or we have to set a date for Sunday, June 15th, in Oman. And there were some back and forth, exchange of messages between Foreign Minister Arakchi and Mr. Witkoff, and also some back and forth between Iran's Foreign Minister, Omani Foreign Minister, also a Prime Minister of Norway and others who were attending the Oslo Forum. And I'm talking about a few hours before the aggression starts. Then we agreed to meet on Sunday. We left Oslo. We arrived in Tehran midnight. I arrived in my apartment 1 a.m. in the morning. 3 a.m. in the morning, my wife woke me up and told me that something is happening, and I rushed into the window and I noticed that the Israelis had started this aggression. This was a very delicate, coordinated assassination operation started by Israelis and Americans, and I do insist that it was a very coordinated attack, because you cannot start assassinating our off-duty commanders or off-duty commanders of another country in the middle of night, 1,500 kilometers away from your country or from your border or from your territory, and then you call it out of blue operation. You need at least months of advanced planning. And now we have all the evidences that CIA and Mossad were all together in data collecting, in planning, and also in operation of assassinating our off-duty commanders. And you have to know that they targeted our commander in the middle of night with their families and with their neighbors. So the aggression started with this assassination operation and continued over few next days with this illusion and delusion that both White House and Tel Aviv had, that Iran is on the verge of collapse. And Iran is so weak that cannot respond efficiently. And by assassinating our top duty commanders, the army of Iran would be collapsed. And many of misarguments and illusions. And I'm very glad that I can tell you right now, when you are in Tehran, when you are in Iran, and you are going around and touring around and you are seeing what is happening here in Iran, that many of those misarguments evaporated, because 12 days war, 12 days, these 12 days of aggression was a laboratory, was a lab of testing of many misarguments put forward by Americans and Israelis, and many of which now it is obvious and clear that were delusions and misarguments.
But how was the nature of the negotiation, the latest negotiations with Steve Witkoff? Because many people would argue that, I remember when Donald Trump came to office, took he was elected in the United States. Even before the election, I don't know if you follow Donald Trump and his interviews before being elected in the United States, he was talking about, let's get closer to Iran and Russia. Why do we need them to be our enemy? That would hugely, damage the power of dollar, which wasn't the case since he took power in the United States. And what was the nature of the negotiation in the latest moments before the attack?
I told you, I was very much frank and straightforward in terms of formulating what was happening. Of course, we had some very important issue in hand which were unsolved and unresolved, including the enrichment, the zero enrichment policy of United States, which never could be accepted by the Iranian negotiating team. But anyway, let me tell you something. When President Trump came to office, and he started with these non-starting negotiating positions of either bomb or submission, our response was very much bold. He started with non-starting negotiating position. We also started with a very bold no. We are not going to talk to you because we are not a country and a nation of submission. We are not a nation of accepting order from anybody, including United States. And this is the history of Iran, and Iran is the oldest continuous living civilization on earth. Let me repeat it for you and also for your audience, that Iran is the oldest living continuous civilization on earth. And this civilization cannot be subjected to this sort of bullying. But anyway, when President Trump modified his position by sending us a letter and suggesting that we can start a negotiation, we also modified our negotiating positions. We accepted to meet indirectly in Oman, and we started with all the honesty, and we were very much well prepared for this sort of negotiation to settle one of the most complicated issue, which is nuclear issue. Because for us it was very much easy. We don't want bomb, we didn't want bomb. So for us it was very easy cake to negotiate on zero bomb. For the other side, though, it was not easy. Later on we noticed, because they were not honest in terms of providing enough subjective guarantee that they are committed to sanction removal. Because the reason that Iran was very much interested was because of the sanctions, illegal, unlawful, extraterritorial sanctions imposed by United States. But let me get back to your question. For us, negotiation means give and take. For President Trump and his team, it was not give and take. It was a sort of dictation. It was take it or leave it. So it cannot work. In negotiation, you need compromise. You need give and take. And that was the problem, that it was not real negotiation. And because there was no real negotiation in place, and still there is no real negotiation, any perspective for any real negotiation, we are in deadlock. Because the other side is not ready for accepting our right, and is not ready for any sort of compromise, and is not ready for any meaningful negotiation. And by meaningful, I mean give and take, very easy, rational compromise. And this is why that the negotiation which happened, there are those who right now argue inside Iran, and you are here. There is a debate inside Iran that they tricked us. That was that the whole negotiating, gesture, quote unquote, was a sort of conspiration. It was, they wanted to conspire through this sort of theater of negotiation. For them, it was not real negotiation because they were planning. And we have to accept that this debate has a merit, because later on President Trump accepted himself that he was part of this operation. And this is why that we are in this understanding that still we need to understand if the other side is really committed to a real negotiation.
But you believe since the beginning of the negotiations, they were making something up to attack you, to put you in a position of comfort, in a position of calmness, to prepare for the war. Because Donald Trump himself said that we were preparing for this moment for 22 years.
Yes. What I can say And what I can tell you with 100% assurance is that the aggression was very much coordinated. It was a very delicate assassination operation. You need at least months of prior planning, and you cannot do it overnight. 1,500 kilometers away from a territory, and coming and assassinate, and assassinate other the figures of other countries. So what I can say is that for us, first of all, there was no real negotiation in place. While we were very much committed to a real negotiation, result-oriented negotiation, the other side was just ready for a sort of dictation. Second, now we do have all the evidences that CIA, Mossad, and many officials, multi-layered relation was very much happening between Israelis and Americans. And third, I can tell you that still there is no perspective of the other side being committed to any sort of result-oriented negotiation. And this is why that we are ready for the other side to come back to diplomacy.
And many people believe that in the West, at least, because I talk with many ex-CIA analysts, they believe that it was a total failure of counterintelligence on the part of Iranians. But when we look at the situation at the same time, because the same thing happened to Russia, the same sort of operation on the nuclear, bombers in Russia, which was planned by Ukrainians and backed by MI6 in the United Kingdom. How do you see the connection between the two? Somehow you see many similarities, but do you have any sort of understanding of what has happened?
First of all, may I challenge, this notion that it was a total failure on counterterrorism or counter-intelligence operation by the Iranian side. Let me tell you something, that yes, it was our September 11th moment. What happened on June 13th was our September 11th, as even United States had its own September 11th. The best assassin of the world, let's call it the Israeli regime. I'm not going to challenge this label for them because they are born to be assassins. Started this operation to assassinate, our top generals. Okay, they successfully implemented those assassination operations, but they only could do that because the intelligence apparatus of Iran was very much remained untouched. They tried to attack the Minister of Intelligence of Iran. They badly failed. They badly failed even to target other parts of Iranian intelligence, and it showed to what extent they were very much vulnerable, because we started to push back and balance back against the aggressor. You know that Iran doesn't have any military satellites, so just collecting very precise and very delicate information of the Israelis of Israelis are not very much easy, because this is the practice that Israelis have done for many years, to manipulate and sabotage data collected by commercial satellites. So, for example, if the GPS characteristics of one center in commercial satellite is somewhere, the actual physical place of that building or that center is somewhere else. And we noticed that during the True Promise 1 and True Promise 2. So this is a very big, important question, how Iran could not only target, but efficiently target and demolish and destroy many important headquarters, intelligence and military headquarters in occupied Palestine, and the Israeli regime now, day by day, they admit that. The response actually embeds in this reality that Iran has very much penetrated into the occupied territory and has access to the information that they couldn't, even.
You mean Israel?
Yes,
Israel, but
yes.
To clarify for our
yes. When I say occupied Palestine, I mean that the territory that they call Israel. But anyway, so it shows to what extent not only the security apparatus of Iran was able to push back, balance back, but the security apparatus was very much capable of penetrating and also collecting data and implementing very successful operation inside, to the extent that you have to remind your audience that on day 3 of the aggression, President Trump tweeted 2 words: unconditional surrender. And unconditional surrenders are those 2 words that the Americans used when they bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. On day 12, at 2 a.m. In the middle of night, we received a request for unconditional ceasefire. So a journey from unconditional surrender to unconditional ceasefire is a journey of a very proud nation of Iran to defend successfully, not only the country, but also being able to push back and put a lot of pain and burden on the shoulders of the aggressors. So this is one part that I really wanted to clarify for you and for your audience. But talking about this unprecedented attack on Iran's safeguarded nuclear facilities, it was the first time in the history. It was the first time in the history that Americans and Israelis, with the carte blanche received by some NATO members, they attacked UN safeguarded peaceful nuclear facilities of another country. And this is a very grave violation of international law. Not only because they attacked safeguarded facilities, but because of many risks involved in attacking such facilities: contamination, radiation, human catastrophe, and many things. If Iran was not predicting and successfully implementing many advanced protection operation, we would have ended in some sort of catastrophe in those facilities. The history would never ever forgive what happened on June 13th when Israelis and Americans attacked UN safeguarded peaceful nuclear facilities, and this is a very bitter reality that IAEA, as the only technical watchdog in charge of protecting such facilities, failed even to condemn that. You know that Americans and Israelis didn't attack even one program or one site. They declare it as a clandestine or hidden program. Wherever they attacked, they came out proudly to say that it was safeguarded, but we attacked. And this is unprecedented in international law and unprecedented in the history of international relations. And this is the huge difference between what happened in Iran and many incidents before. For example, in 1981, when Israelis attacked an empty building, 1981, in Iraq, that building was supposed to be later on used as a nuclear facility. But at the time of attack, it was empty. And it is very interesting that unanimously, United Nations Security Council condemned Israeli attack against that empty building. This time, they attacked many safeguarded peaceful facilities, and IAEA failed even to verbally condemn. And this is something that international law would never forget, Iranian would never forget. And because of that, I said that there shouldn't be any impunity for those who started aggression against Iran and started aggression against our safeguarded facilities.